My name is Stefan Bojic. I'm coming from Serbia, and now I'm 30 years old. Sort of, you could say that, I guess. I play now what we coin sort of a term that people refer to it as freestyle tennis, and that's my specialty at the moment. But I did play tennis my whole life before that. I don't know, to be honest. I think it's a very tough question. I think I'm still sort of in search of it. When I started it all, when I started to do it, I used to refer to it as elementary techniques, which still kept it as part of the project. And my whole idea was that this is something that should be elementary for coming inside of tennis. So for me, really, the freestyle tennis then from that name grew to freestyle tennis, but it was mostly referring to the activity where I'm bouncing the ball on the frame and sort of moving around with the ball and trying to explore sort of these movements and motions. And after that, it sort of transitioned to the courts itself, because a lot of people were asking me like, oh, but can you play tennis? This is the most common question I was getting all the time. Can you play tennis? Can you play tennis? So I said, okay, let me show you what I can do on the court. So then I started making these videos which were mostly trick shot based. But the terminology is very important for me and no one else. But I have to know exactly what I refer to. So in terms of freestyle, I think it's still not defined or ever will be, but most simply to answer would be sort of an exploration what can be possible to be done with the racket and the ball. I think I had an idea when I was little. It bothered me in a way that my friends who are basketball players or football players can do stuff off the court and sort of improve and sort of practice all the time. But for tennis, you had to book a court and you had to have a coach almost and balls, and this wasn't very accessible in Serbia at the time. So I think that's where the idea originated. Also, I think my whole life and experiences and sort of backgrounds of different subcultures, I do think it's a continuation of all these freestyle sports on different areas of life, and I do think it's an extension of maybe the whole hip hop culture but really different influences from different periods of my life. I think brought up to this idea. And in regards to friends, for example, very important ones were surrealism. When I was young, was very interesting to me as an art movement, and later on parkour, which originated really close by. And philosophically speaking, I think, and a lot of people said that to me, like, you're doing good parkour with the racket and the ball, which isn't really true, but I think just the philosophy behind it was something that was very inspirational to me. For me, the exact motions and movements is nothing to. I mean, sometimes I look at even some kids today. They make. A lot of kids and a lot of people make videos and then they send me, and then I'm like, okay, that's a cool idea. If I did it like this, it would turn out like this. But to me, it's just the inspiration. If it's there, then I can go to work. So I try to inspire myself on a daily basis, just in terms of living life. But then the creative process for me was always going to work. So if I'm in a good emotional place, I'll be able to produce good stuff. If I'm not, then I'm not. So I'm really inspired by a lot of things, and I try to find it in everything. In terms of moves itself, I follow every sport you can imagine. Yeah. So like I mentioned, parkour, David Bell would be one. He's the sort of originator of parkour in a way. It's a lot of collaboration, but a lot of people say he's like the one. He had a very inspirational book for me. It's called Parkour. You can download it online. Then Rodney Mullen from skateboarding is one of the pioneers of skateboarding. Was a big deal to me. Also has a great book out there. It's autobiography. Then like the whole end-one movement in basketball. If you remember, end-one was like street ball guys, and but it was different than Harlem Globetrotters, you know, and that's something I also draw from a lot. It's not just for me about entertainment and entertaining factor. I try to make it athletic. I try to keep it physical, which I think end-one guys did. So that's a high standard for me. Then Joga Bonito, if you remember, the Brazilian style of football with Ronaldinho. Travis Pastrana with the motorcycles. I mean, anyone that sort of introduced a revolution in their sport, for me, is one of the heroes when it comes to sports. So it's not even, you know, results-wise, as much as what did that person do for that sport. That's how I look at it.
Okay. The question is, across the list of people you mentioned, there is no tennis player. Is there like
True.
a regular tennis player who like is an inspiration to you, or that you would refer to as like somehow a freestyler?
No, I think Novak is a huge inspiration for me. Djokovic. Sorry, I didn't repeat your question. So the tennis player that's inspiration for me, next to all of the athletes and artists and things like that, I would say Novak Djokovic would be the one, just because in Serbia we know his story very well, and we knew what it takes to do what he's done, and nobody thought it was possible. I do believe on an inspirational level, probably I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't inspired in some way by Novak. So in terms of that, you know, but it's all, again, it's the story of his life and his journey that's inspirational to me, more so than maybe winning some tournaments. And I do think that's gonna be his, for example, biggest legacy, that everyone's sort of worried about his legacy. I think he's the first guy who came from this sort of non-traditional tennis world and broke it open and became a big name. And I think in the future, when the world opens up and it goes to, I don't know, India and China and these places where new champions might come from, I think they'll look up for Novak, and that's going to be their hero. I think his legacy is going to grow tremendously after his career. So him, and I gotta also mention, growing up, I really liked James Blake when he was playing, and I had his book. Was a very inspirational person to me. It comes down to really coordination, you know, your motor control of the body, more so than, and also creativity, obviously, more so maybe than performing results, which come after in these sports that somehow become sports and become competitive, and then people figure it out, and then and maybe even go to extreme. So they really have a superior, it's called motor control. So their control over their body, over their muscles is incredible. And also their ability to go inside a certain field and just, you know, penetrate the walls and sort of, you know, break into new worlds and open up for everyone. I don't know. I think. I mean, I know that there is some. There is more and more young freestylers, which again we don't know what is the case, what his effects will be, and how their careers will pan out. I think there is a huge market opportunity for that also, but I don't know. Maybe I am. I mean, there is some guys that sometimes, but I think I'm maybe the only one doing it full time. And the kids are going to school, so you know, I think it's going to be very interesting how they develop, and that's why I'm sort of working on a very big project that I want to release, because I don't think they still understand what it is that I do when I go to practice, how it looks. So it's, for me, for example, for first 2 years I did not release one video when I was doing it. There was no records of, it was just me and the ball and the racket and practice, sort of exploration of this, before I start to release. And today, because I mean, everything's fast-paced, and I mean, it has its positives and negatives. I think one of the negatives is that maybe they're too focused on making a next viral video, and I don't think that's skill-based, and I think that's short-termed. So that's something that I want to communicate to them in order for them to see, like, okay, if I'm gonna do my thing, if I'm gonna take it to the next level, then I have to really work on and hone my skills until I can really do it. So my method was very similar to what Rodney Mullen was doing. And I would just take a racket and a ball and I would spend 2 hours every day, which I would time to have the racket and the ball in my hands. If I'm taking a break, it stops. And it sounds like maybe a bit, trivial, but the reality is when you don't know what you're doing and you're doing it for 2 hours a day, it's very, very mentally challenging. And to keep that discipline, I think is something very, very hard to do. So for the first few years, it looked like that. Now it changed, it evolved, you have different things that are happening, you try to do. But really, I think that was the core, and it's not something that I did because of Rodney and his method. I was already doing it at the time, and then inside those 2 hours you start developing your own methodologies, like how do you acquire a skill, how do you combine it, how do you, I wrote this everything, so hopefully I will release it one day, but yeah, I had my rules of operating. Very difficult. I mean, I think the most difficult part was to change that, because I was so comfortable with doing that every day, and then sort of results weren't coming along. And I knew I could do this, but it wasn't this, so I was kind of stubborn. I have to do it this way. So that, for me, was maybe the most difficult challenge, how to, sort of set free from myself, free myself from myself in a way where, okay, it's okay if I don't go do that, I don't have to feel bad about it. I don't have to, ponder upon it and sort of, just think about that all the time. And once I've done that, then I saw, okay, there is different venues that I can take it in. Because for me, the most important thing was the creation of it. So once I created it and I got recognized a little bit in the tennis world, I think I was confused in a way. Because, okay, I did it, what now? And now was the second step, I think, was the distribution of the idea. And the distribution of the idea is not the same as just the idea itself. It's just there and working on it without the outside world. So the distribution of the idea really takes different venues. Do this, do this. But if I keep it in the core, that this is why I'm doing it, then to me, getting famous on Instagram makes sense. Doing TikTok videos makes sense. Getting sponsored, getting to tournaments, getting here. Because the core is, I know what I'm doing. So I know that I'm sort of protecting that idea and trying to nurture it so I can give it to the world in a way. Yeah, definitely there is. I mean, listen, this depends a lot on the interests of the market, if you ask me. I mean, it's already a competition if you're doing it. You're competing against yourself primarily. But I do definitely have a few ideas how this could be done. It just depends. I think it's still very, very young. If you look at it comparing to other things that happened, the interest of the big brands and of tournaments and the more and more interest that it's gaining, it just shows that there is something there. How we're gonna explore that is really, up for grabs. Is not defined yet. So I think the funny thing is that that's gonna define what freestyle tennis is, but it doesn't necessarily, mean that. Yeah. Both I value. The thing is, you can make a video today that's just because it's so fresh and new and that it's not mastered, you haven't mastered it, and then you make a video and it can go really big. I don't find that entertaining. I really think you have to own it before it deserves any respect. But the performance side, even myself, I haven't, sort of on the court, I haven't mastered that because there hasn't been a demand for it. So for me, it's very difficult to try to practice that every day without the platform. So if I had, okay, we're going on a tour and we're doing this and this, then it would be easy. So I think it's connected in this way. But yeah, I think both, really. I don't know. I have like set sequences that I do because it's hard to keep track. And then when I started performing with a certain routine, then it's sort of locked down. So really the different flows that I like to do, but certain movies that I think the most recognizable, I coined it a bit egoistically after myself. It's called Kung Fu Step, but I think it's also sort of says a lot about me that I named it Kung Fu Step. So.
Is there like something with like humiliation in freestyle tennis? With
You know, that's the tough part. That I think this interaction part where you can trick your opponent is really the like unbelievable level. So that's something really difficult to do, I think.
Okay, and is it some like do you sometimes play against a freestyler and it's
No, I didn't have.
freestyle is the best, like,
No, because we didn't have the chance yet. But that's what I'm saying. That's what I think is going to happen in the future. You know, with the next generations, I think there is so much potential there. You know, like with creating a team and with creating things like that, where they can feed off each other. That I do think then it can become freestyle tennis because I still don't. It's funny for me to observe it as a thing. You know. I think he's really I mean, his resilience is unbelievable. Obviously his mental strength is something else. But I do think people underestimate his athleticism. When we talk about Novak, we always say mental giant, but the reality is he's very good at everything. So at some things, probably the best in the world. But when you look at everything, he's just so solid and so fine. You know, is incredible what recently he's done with his forehand, how that aspect of the game grew for him. It became really a weapon of his. His serve, he improved his first serve incredibly. His movement was always superior to everyone. You know, his defense is, I mean, just every element of his game, he can do it all, he can do everything. And that's why his records show that, and his percentages, and is just incredible, especially against top 10 players, against the legends. It really shows that he's super solid tennis player that's almost unbeatable sometimes. No. No. Yeah, I'm sure all of them could be, because they have obviously the mind for success. You know, they know how to do something if they want to do it. And also, because it's funny, because when we do it, you know, they're always like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. I said, no, of course you can. If you practice, you could do it. I mean, it's as simple as that. For me, it was very surprising once we got to spend more time together and do freestyle, to feel Novak's motion in a way, how he moves with the ball and how quickly he was learning was very interesting to observe. Because there, in live, I could recognize like what an unbelievable athlete he is, because I would tell him do this, he does it, do this, he does it. Although sometimes he's always trying to make fun of himself that he can do it, but he was actually, yeah, he's actually probably my best student. No, I can't. No. Well, I don't know. I'm very bad when you put me on spot like this. I have to prepare anecdotes.
It's like you don't have to force yourself unless you have one.
I have. Yeah. So when we were filming our first sort of video together, it was for another brand, and it's the first time I met him. He just had a son, so right away when he approached me, I said, "Oh, I'm very honored you named your son after me," and you know, we started laughing. And because my job was for 3 days to work with all these players, but the set was so sort of small, it was 2 people, then I had to do a lot of things. So I had to actually explain the player that they're going to come in here and they're going to do this and that. And he was standing here and sort of excited, you know, first time with him. And he's like, I go outside the frame, I say, you stay here, I'm going to come in. And he said, oh, yeah. And I walk away and he looks at me and says, oh, Steph, come, just come. And I lean in. And he's like, you know, my racket here is kind of new. Can you see what, like, something's wrong with it? And I lean in and he hits me. It's an old tennis trick. He hits me in a tough spot. And he starts laughing. He says, oh, I tricked the trickster. No shoot today. We're done. And I'm very sorry we don't have these videos. I just said, new balls, please. That was that was it.
So he could.
So no, but no courts. They're important to me, but spots where I used to live. So like there is one spot in New York when I used to live with this family. That's very important for my story and the story of freestyle. And in their backyard, I used to practice. Also, there is one spot in Washington Square Park, and then there is one spot back home in my hometown of Novi Sad. But I mean, that's I tell you, but yeah, I will have to show you. It's really nothing. It's just all I really looked for was sort of an empty place where I can be alone with, I don't know, like 3 by 3 meters of concrete. So that was a happy place for me.